NFL free agency is something that GMs can't sleep over where you see new players move. But there's more players than need a home. Today I will talk about some of the remaining free agents that could use a home. First one we'll talk about is Ryan Tannehill, previously with the Tennessee Titans. Now in 2023, Ryan Tannehill had a 78.5 QB passer rating, a 64.8% completion percentage, 4 TDs, 7 interceptions, 1,616 yards, a 3.8% turnover worthy praise, which was tied for the 8th lowest among QBs. Now, Ryan Tannehill is mostly just a backup nowadays, but a backup who can mentor a young QB, but can win you games if you have to have him come in. A good athlete during play actions, good accuracy, not great accuracy, good arm strength and ball placement, but again, not great. And the thing with Ryan Tannehill is he's not close to a definite starter anymore, and he's not really much of a running QB, but can be very sneaky with the runs. Some team fits I can see him for is the Bears, Broncos, Raiders, 49ers, Lions, Ravens, and Packers. Next QB we'll talk about is Brian Hoyer, previously with the Las Vegas Raiders. In 2023, Brian Hoyer had a 50.8% QB passer rating, a 54.8% completion rating, threw 0 touchdowns but threw 2 interceptions, threw for 231 yards, and had a 2.1% turnover worthy praise, which was tied for the 5th lowest for all QBs. Now, Brian Hoyer is a QB3 at most with fine accuracy, which is really all I can say. I guess he can point out the blitzes and defenses, but I mean, seeing how he had 2 interceptions and 0 TDs, I mean, he doesn't make the most of it, it seems. Some teams I can see that pick him up is the Commanders, if he wants to re-sign with the Raiders, and the Titans. Final QB we'll be talking about is Blaine Gabbert, previously with the Kansas City Chiefs. In 2023, Blaine Gabbert had a 31.2 QB passer rating, a 51.4% completion rating, threw for 0 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, and he threw for 185 yards and had a 4.9% turnover worthy praise, which was 27th in the league and the highest within the free agents I have on the source. Now, Blaine Gabbert, like Brian Hoyer, is a QB3 at most in my opinion. He has fine accuracy, but throws a lot of turnovers, and kind of like Ryan Tannehill, he's not a running QB, but he can be very sneaky with runs. And some team fits I see for him are the Commanders, Raiders, and Titans. Now I'm going to get into the RBs, and the first one I want to talk about is Jerick McKinnon, previously with the Kansas City Chiefs. Jerick McKinnon is a good receiving back, will attempt and complete pass blocks. He is a very good reader and a very useful RB2 or RB3 on a team. But the downsides of him is he's not someone you want to run the ball with, even though he is a running back, but he can rush. He has 60 rushing yards, which is a 2.9 yards per attempt, and only has 1 rushing TD in 2023. But also in 2023, he also had 207 receiving yards and 4 receiving touchdowns, and had a PFF elusive rating of 26.4. Some teams I can see that would fit him perfectly are the Saints, Panthers, and Patriots. The final running back I want to talk about is Latavius Murray, previously on the Buffalo Bills. Latavius Murray is a nice veteran to have for your RBs and can get you yards. And in 2023, he had 300 yards, 3.8 yards per attempt, 4 rushing TDs, 159 receiving yards, 0 receiving TDs, and a PFF elusive rating of 20. That is literally all I can say for Leviticus Murray. Like, watching the film, nothing really popped out for me for him. And I mean, at 34, you're not going to expect a whole ton, to be fair. But some team fits I can see are the Bengals, Bucks, and the Vikings. Those are teams that could use a veteran RB. I'll talk about one fullback, and that's Keith Smith, previously with the Atlanta Falcons. Keith Smith is a solid run blocker, an adequate pass protector, a solid receiving fullback, but not a factor at all when it comes to rushing the ball. Keith Smith has 33 receiving yards, a 11.0 yards per reception, and 0 touchdowns. And yep, that is it. Some teams I can see is just any teams that have a fullback injury, like the 49ers, Ravens, and Texans, even though I think Andrew Beck is on the practice squad for the Texans now, but still. Although, that one's kind of a bit weird, like just having a fullback as a backup, because I know fullbacks aren't exactly, big in the NFL now, but, having him still as, like, if Pat Ricard or Kyle Juszczyk get injured and you want to just bring him in for, like, a week or two and then put him on the practice squad, it's not the worst idea in the world, but, yeah. Now, let's talk some receivers. The first one I want to talk about is Michael Thomas, previously with the New Orleans Saints. Michael Thomas is a good outside the numbers route runner and catcher. He only had one drop on 62 targets. He had 17 contested targets with 8 contested catches. He had 448 yards with 11.5 yards per reception and 1 touchdown. He only had 106 yards after the catch, which is not amazing, but it's alright. And another thing with Michael Thomas is he's not a great separator, and he's still a threat guard, and he's very known for, but he also does run really great out routes. But the biggest question with Michael Thomas is his health and attitude towards teammates, which you saw in the Saints when he got suspended by Sean Payton himself. And I will say I agree with PFF for on the free agent ranks with calling him a master technician, which you can see a lot in his film. He knows what to run and runs it very well. Now, a lot of teams I can see trying to get him, well, at least trying later on to get him because, I mean, he's still unsigned, but some teams I see that can fit him well are the Ravens, Cowboys, Patriots, and Bills, who could use a veteran receiver. Next one I want to talk about is Hunter Renfrow, previously with the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, there's been a lot of emotions with rookies and all that for the slot receiver position, but I still believe Hunter Renfrow is a top 10 slot receiver in the league. He's a great route runner, has good speed, and is a very smart receiver. Although, some of the downsides is he had very bad drops last year with 6 drops, and he was not a great separator last year at all. His stats are 255 yards with 10.2 yards per reception, 4 contested targets with 0 catches for contested catches, and he had 152 yards after the catch. Some team fits I can see for him are the Cowboys, Panthers, Patriots, and Falcons. And I will also add the Rams because as of recording this, they lost Cooper Kupp for a bit and Puka Nacua was on the IR. So, and you can also say the same with Michael Thomas also. Just they could use a receiver. Next person I want to talk about is Richie James, previously with the Kansas City Chiefs. So, obviously a Super Bowl receiver because they just won last year, but nonetheless, um, some things I noticed for Richie James is he had 2 drops on 18 targets, so not obviously too amazing. 4 for 1 on contested targets to catches, 120 yards, and 10.9 yards per reception. He had 0 touchdowns, and from what I saw, he is a wide receiver 4 or 5 at best. He had fine speed, he fights for every yard and can break some tackles, and he had 63 yards after the catch. Some team fits I can see for him are the Raiders, the Buccaneers, the Vikings, Bears, and the Rams. Next one I want to talk about is Jamal Agnew, previously with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, one thing I want to note about Jamal Agnew is he's a very good returner, a great returner. So if you need someone for special teams, definitely someone to pick up. But as him as a receiver, he had 0 drops, was 3 for 2 on contested targets to catches. He had 225 yards. He had 16.1 yards per reception, had 1 touchdown, and had 81 yards after the catch. Again, like Richie James, he's a wide receiver 4 or 5 at best, but he has pretty good speed, like some really good ones. I remember the one clip of him being out. I believe it was Arthur Morett on the Ravens, and me as a Ravens fan was not a joyful watch, but yeah. Some team fits I can see from him are the Seahawks, the Lions, and also the Rams, because yeah, the Rams need a receiver. Next person I want to talk about is Marquise Goodwin, previously with the Cleveland Browns. Now, stat-wise, he had 67 yards, 16.8 yards per reception, 0 touchdowns, 1 drop on 14 targets. He was 3-0 on contested targets to catches. For him, he is just a veteran wide receiver who has played the game for a while now. He's mostly a depth piece, but could be a wide receiver 5 or 6 if desperate enough. He's an average run blocker. He has fine speed. Another thing about him is he's a really good rushing weapon. I saw the Browns use him for a lot on Jets and all that, and he was pretty darn good at it. And some team fits I can see is the Chargers, the Bills, the Raiders, the Cowboys, and once again, the Rams. Next person I want to talk about is Corey Davis, previously with the New York Jets. Now, one thing I want to say before we move on and get on with Corey Davis is this dude and the next dude I have, the film I'm showing is from the 2022 season and not 2023 because, well, this dude unretired. Oh, he retired and then he unretired, so that's why this is in 2022 and not 2023. But yeah, just remember that in the back of your mind. But anyways, he had 536 yards. He had 16.8 yards per reception. He had 2 touchdowns, had 3 drops. He was 19 for 9 on contested targets to catches. And for him, he has really good speed and acceleration and can work in the middle of the field. And I mean, as you can see as a theme, he is probably a wide receiver 4 or maybe a wide receiver 3. Like I can definitely see it on some teams, but I don't even know, especially with him being retired for a season. Um, some teams I can see him for are the Ravens, Cowboys, Patriots, Bills, and the Rams. And I know a lot of these teams I've said a bunch of times, but they could really use somewhat of some of these guys' talents on the team. The final receiver is Russell Gage, previously actually with the Baltimore Ravens, or he was in the preseason, but then got cut by him. But last year on a team, like actually playing, was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And same with Corey Davis, this guy I'm showing 2022 film because he was injured all of 2023, so yep. Again, he's coming back from an injury. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head, but yeah, he was coming from a season-ending injury. He had 436 yards, 8.2 yards per reception, 5 touchdowns, 5 drops. He was 10 for 6 on contested targets to catches, which was the best of any years he's played. He had 188 yards after the catch. In my opinion, he's a good slot option, and he's very good in the short to intermediate ranges. So like if you're throwing those like slants, flats, and all that, he's very good at that from what I saw on film. And some team fits I can see for him are the Broncos, the Eagles, the Cowboys, and you can guess it, the Rams. Now on to the tight ends. The next person we're going to talk about is Jimmy Graham, previously with the New Orleans Saints. Now, Jimmy Graham had 39 yards, 6.5 yards per reception, 4 touchdowns, 0 drops on 7 targets. He was 2 for 2 on contested targets to catches, and he was a touchdown machine and an end zone threat. Like, if you had him lined up in the end zone, just know that he was more than likely going to get a touchdown. And for Jimmy Graham, he's a solid possession tight end, not a big factor at all blocking wise, but he is a great tight end to have in 3 tight end sets that are intended for passing sets, but he would be great in that. Some team fits I can see is going back to the Saints. and I can see him either on the Raiders or the Browns also, who could definitely use some tight end threes or twos even. Next person I'm going to talk about is Blake Bell, previously with the Kansas City Chiefs. So, again, another Super Bowl winning player. So, yay. Now, for him as a tight end, he had 26 yards, 5.2 yards per reception, one touchdown, one drop on 9 targets, two for on contested targets to catches. He's a fine block and release tight end, which, if you don't know, is when they'll just block a dude for like a second or two and then just release, usually like on a flat, and they'll be an option for the tight end. But honestly, he's more of a practice squad tight end, which kind of might have myself questioning why I have him on here, but oh well. And for a team, honestly, take your pick. Honestly, he could fit on any team as a practice squad tight end. So whatever your heart desires for this dude, he can probably fit right in there and just be perfectly fine. Just perfectly fine. Next tight end I'm going to talk about is Trayvon Wesco, previously with the Tennessee Titans. Sorry if I butchered that last name, but for Trayvon, he was 2 for 1 for targets to receptions. He had 21 yards, and which is just 21.0 yards per reception because he only got one reception. He also had one drop on 2 targets, so the one he had a drop, and then the one he had a reception. But one thing, the reason why I have him on here is he's a really good, solid blocking tight end for both run and passing, and for that he's more of a blocking specialist, kind of like how Chris Manhertz is. But I mean, Chris Manhertz does it probably better, and he's still a really good receiving tight end. So, but yeah, he's just a very good, you know, blocking tight end to have on your team. And I think he did have some fullback snaps, if I'm not wrong. Maybe I am, but some teams I can see him for is the 49ers and Dolphins because they love the blocking tight ends. So, yeah. And the running game is very strong, so blocking tight ends would be really good for them. Final tight end I have is CJ Uzami, previously with the Philadelphia Eagles, who played a bit in the preseason, but full team was the New York Jets, which I have on film. For CJ Uzami, he was 13 for 8 for targets to receptions. He had 58 yards. He also had 7.3 yards per reception, one touchdown, one drop, and 2 for 1 on contested targets to catches. He's a very good receiving threat, especially as a tight end. He's definitely a tight end too, which I mean kind of surprised me when the Eagles released him, but I guess he wasn't showing much. Even preseason, Grant Calcaterra is a lot better than I thought, and his run blocking is very good, and he's also a capable route runner. So honestly, a very strong tight end too for the team. Some team fits I can see for him are the Chargers, Falcons, and the Colts. Now to get into the O-line and the final position for offense, next dude I want to talk about is David Bakhtiari, previously with the Green Bay Packers. Now, his stats for last year for the one game he played was zeros on the board, so he allowed no sacks, no pressures, no anything. He has the great ability to stop the edge rusher in the tracks, the great ability to stand his ground, like you can just leave him on an island and he can take care of that edge rusher. He's a great pass protector and a good run protector. The biggest question with him is his health because he's been injured a whole shit ton. But on a team, he'd be definitely one of the best backup tackles. Like honestly, up there with probably like how Olu Fashanu is on the Jets. Like just like probably definitely top 3 backup tackles in the league. Some teams I can see that can fit for him are the Commanders, the Ravens, the Patriots, and the Dolphins, especially with a couple of those teams who have very injury prone, left tackles like Ronnie Stanley and Teron Armstead. Next dude I want to talk about is DJ Humphries, previously with the Arizona Cardinals. Now, DJ Humphries only allowed 4 sacks, 5 QB hits, and 19 QB hurries, and 28 QB pressures in total. So, not the most amazing numbers, but not also bad numbers. The thing with DJ Humphries is he's still recovering from a torn ACL, which I believe he suffered early January, late December, so that's probably why he isn't on a team because he's still healing from that. But when he gets healed, I swear he will be on a team because he's a good pass protector and run defender, and he pushes defenders back very well, very well. And a lot of team fits I can see for him, or team fits I can see for him, are the Panthers, Steelers, Chargers, and again the Ravens, because Lonnie Stanley will find his way onto the injury report at some point in the season. Next one and final one I want to talk about is Charles Leno, previously with the Washington Commanders. Now for Charles Leno, he allowed 3 sacks, 5 QB hits, and 26 QB hurries, which in total is 34 QB pressures. So he allowed a lot of hurries, but also I believe a lot of that was probably just, Sam Howell being Sam Howell. He's a good backup tackle to help develop the young guys. He can hold his own against edge rushers, and you can keep him on an island, but it's not something you want to do often because he can get beat. I mean, I just kind of told you that he allowed a bunch of QB hurries, so it's not someone you want to keep there a lot. And some teams I can see him for are the Saints, Titans, the Cowboys, and of course I said it for all the other ones, but the Baltimore Ravens. Now, for the truly last one, I believe I said Charles Renner was the last one, but I was wrong, and you were tricked. But it is Donovan Smith, previously with the Kansas City Chiefs. So, again, a Super Bowl winning player. And this dude actually deserves that because he played a lot in the Super Bowl. I believe in not the one just in 2023, but in 2022, I believe he played, but I could be wrong. But anyway, his time when he was starting, he allowed 3 sacks, 9 QB hits, 41 QB hurries, which led to 53 QB pushes, so very high. As a matter of fact, I believe it just keeps rising and rising with these dudes, but oh well. He gives some good blocks. Again, you can leave him on an island, but he sometimes gives up very easily, and his run blocking is somewhat non-existent. I mean, he his he like we said, he gives up a lot when he's run blocking, but his pass blocking is pretty darn good. Now, team fits I can see him for are the Eagles, the Falcons, and the Colts also. Now to move on to the only guard on here, we have Mike Grotsky, previously with the New York Giants. I'm sorry if I butchered that last name, but for Mark, he allowed 6 sacks, 1 QB hit, and 17 QB hurries, which led to 24 QB pressures in total. And he's a good blocker who can hold up on his own and would be a really good backup guard to have on your team. Some team fits I can see for him are the Bears and the Bengals. And it's really just only those two because they could use some backup guards. Now I want to get into the centers. First one we're going to talk about is Mason Cole, previously with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, with him, one thing I want to note is he played in all 18 games, I believe starting. So, you know that saying, the best ability is availability. So, you kind of have that when you get him. But other than that, he allowed 2 sacks, 5 QB hits, 24 QB hurries. So, he allowed 31 QB pressures in total. Things I noticed with him is he's a solid run blocker, but doesn't bring much in the passing game. And at most, he's honestly a backup center. Some team fits I can see from him are the Dolphins, Raiders, and Giants. Now we're going to get to the defensive side. First, I want to talk about Shaq Lawson, previously with the Buffalo Bills. Shaq Lawson had 17 total pressures, 1 sack, 6 QB hits, and 10 QB hurries. He also had 0 batted passes with 10 tackles, 4 assisted tackles, and 5 missed tackles. He also had 6 defensive stops and had a 1.7% pass rush win rate on PFF. Now, some things I saw with Shaq Lawson is he's a good run stopper, but not much to give in the pass rushing. He's a good veteran to have and he gives you like the full pass rush moves I saw, like swims and bull rushes, but Usually they don't fully mean like give you too much, like they don't win too much, but it's nice to see that he has the full moves in. And some team fits I can see is the Ravens, Falcons, Bears, and the Buccaneers. Next person I want to talk about is Anthony Barr, previously with the Minnesota Vikings. Anthony Barr had one total pressure, which was a QB hurry. He also had one sack and one defensive stop. Everything else on the board was zeros. And the thing I like about Anthony Barr is he can go in coverage. Like he is a real I would say pretty decent coverage edge, and he still has some power. And he's a veteran, so you can use him. But he's mostly a depth piece. People I can see him for is the Cardinals, Rams, and Falcons. Next person I want to talk about is Yannick Ngakoue, previously with the Chicago Bears. Now, for him, he had 4 sacks, 4 QB hits, 26 QB hurries, 0 batted passes, 11 tackles, 6 assisted tackles, 7 missed tackles, 11 defensive stops, and a 5.1% pass rush win rate, which I believe, or not I believe, was the lowest out of pass rushers who had 80% snaps. And I think it was out of 1,000. So not overly amazing, but I mean, you're not really using him as your number one pass rusher, to be fair. And yeah, he was the worst pass rusher win rate for someone who played 50% of 718 pass rush snaps. So I did actually have it down. And he does have speed. He's a solid run stopper, and he's definitely rotational for first or second downs. But that is it. So teams I can see for is the Falcons, Cardinals, and Patriots. Person I want to talk about is Charles Harris, previously with the Detroit Lions. Now he has 24 total pressures with 2 sacks, 2 QB hits, and 20 QB hurries with 0 batted passes. He also has 8 tackles, 3 assisted tackles, 1 missed tackle, and 5 defensive stops with a 11% pass rush win rate. So probably the best pass rush win rate we'll have on this list. And I mean, with that, he can get to the QB. He is good at stopping the run, and he's another rotational player. But you probably will want him for third downs a lot more than Ngakoue just a bit before, who you want on just first and second. And some teams I can see fit for him are the Patriots, the Commanders, and also the Bears. Now I want to talk about Al Woods, previously at the New York Jets. Al Woods had 2 pressures with a sack and a QB hurry, with 0 batted passes, 3 tackles, 2 assisted tackles, and 0 missed tackles, with 4 defensive stops. Now for him, he's a veteran mentor. He's a nose tackle to take on double teams and can break, but he's also, again, a rotational depth piece. Some team fits I can see for him are the Eagles, the Falcons, and the Commanders. Next person I want to talk about is Zach Cunningham, previously with the Philadelphia Eagles. Zach Cunningham had 7 total pressures, 0 sacks, 2 QB hits, 5 QB hurries, and 0 batted passes. He also had 72 tackles, 22 assisted tackles with 15 missed tackles, and he had 35 defensive stops. He was 67 to 47 on targets to receptions, so on 67 targets, he allowed 47 receptions. He allowed 390 yards allowed. He had 1 touchdown allowed. He also had 0 interceptions, but did have 6 pass breakups. And when targeted, he allowed a 89.8 QB passer rating on PFF. Now, some things I noticed of him is he's good in the short game. He does give up a lot of yards in the medium range at the 10 to 20 yards. He's a consistent tackler. He is more of a backup linebacker at this point, but I mean, if you have to put him as your 2, it's not bad. And he's a blitzer. Some team fits I can see are the Dolphins and the Rams, especially the Rams. Next person I want to talk about is Kwon Alexander, previously at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, he had 5 total pressures, 1 sack, 1 QB hit, 3 QB hurries, and 0 batted passes. He also had 34 tackles, 6 assisted tackles, and 10 missed tackles. He also had 13 defensive stops and 2 forced fumbles. He was 30 for 19 on targets to receptions. He allowed 188 yards. He did allow 0 touchdowns. He did also have an interception, but no pass breakups. And the QB passer rating against him was 67.1 on PFF. Now I will say he has had two torn Achilles injuries, so I mean his Achilles is probably like brought up like duct tape and stuff. So, but he's also a very smart linebacker. He reads the plays very well. He also, like Cunningham, he does give up a lot of like a good bit of yards in the medium range, like 10 to 20 yards. He's a backup, but maybe a linebacker too. Also, if you do need him. And some team fits I can see are the Bucks, Giants, and the Patriots. And you can also put the Rams down with Ernest Jones getting traded and all that. But yes. Next person I want to talk about is Xavier Howard, previously with the Miami Dolphins. Xavier Howard had 38 tackles, 4 assisted tackles, and 7 missed tackles, with 8 defensive stops, 0 forced fumbles. He was 71 to 44 on targets to receptions allowed. He allowed 502 yards allowed. He had 2 TDs allowed. He did have an interception and had 8 pass breakups, which he allowed a QB rating of 86.7 on PFF. And I mean, he can't keep up with the top receivers in the league, but can bully the not so top ones. So like your twos, maybe even like your ones that are like rookies, he can definitely bully. But like he's going against like Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, CD Lamb. I mean, he's done for. And he's a very smart corner, whether that's zone or press coverage. The biggest concern with him is his legal issues with. I mean, I'm not going to talk about it on here, but yeah, they're bad. And honestly, he's probably a fine two to have in your system. Maybe like a rotational two, but he's a very good one to have. And some teams I can see for him are the Texans, the Falcons, and your Super Bowl winning Kansas City Chiefs. Next person I want to talk about is Patrick Peterson, previously with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Patrick Peterson had 41 tackles, 8 assisted tackles, 10 missed tackles, and 12 defensive stops. He also had 0 forced fumbles. He had 62 targets and allowed 33 receptions. He allowed 431 yards. He allowed 5 TDs, but he also did have 2 interceptions, 6 pass breakups, and he allowed a QB passer rating of 88.8 on PFF. Now, the thing about Patrick Peterson is he's a versatile corner and free safety. He played free safety towards the end of the 2023 season. He's also a veteran, but he's also a skeleton of his former self. He's no longer Optimus Prime, and he's not the most reliable defender, and is mostly just a depth/backup piece at this point. Now, some teams I can see that are fit for him are the Vikings, and of course, yours Super Bowl winning Kansas City Chiefs. The final cornerback I want to talk about is J.C. Jackson, previously with the New England Patriots. And you'll probably see he was also with the LA Chargers, but he was traded from the Chargers to New England, I believe in like towards the beginning of the weeks. Now, J.C. Jackson had 26 tackles, 2 assisted tackles, and 3 missed tackles with 4 defensive stops. He also had 0 forced fumbles. He was 63 to 35 on targets to receptions allowed. He allowed 515 yards, 5 TDs, and had only 1 interception before pass breakups, and allowed a 102.3 QB passer rating. He's still a young not QB, cornerback, which, I mean, I believe he's like 27, 28, so still pretty young for a cornerback. He did have a suspension, which, as of recording this, I believe is up. I think it was only for 2 weeks. And he did have his 2 worst seasons back to back. But he does have great speed to keep up with fast receivers, and he's a fine press corner. Like, he'd be a good cornerback to a rotation cornerback to have in your cornerback room. Some team fits I can see for him are the Bengals, the Falcons, and then the Commanders. And the final position is the safeties. I want to talk about Adrian Phillips, previously with the New England Patriots. Adrian Phillips had 10 tackles, 3 assisted tackles, 5 missed tackles, 4 defensive stops. He allowed 52 yards, 0 TDs. He also had 0 interceptions and 0 pass breakups. And he allowed a 110.0 QB passer rating. He played in the box a good bit. He's a good run stopper, not amazing in coverage, and again, more of a depth piece or backup. And some team fits I can see for him are the Falcons, Bengals, and the Eagles. The final person I want to talk about is Jayron Kearse, previously with the Dallas Cowboys. Jayron Kearse had 5 total pressures, 2 sacks, 1 QB hit, and 2 QB hurries, with 1 batted pass. He also had 55 tackles, 12 assisted tackles, and 0 missed tackles, with also 19 defensive stops. He was 42 to 34 on targets to receptions allowed. He allowed 371 yards, with 1 TD allowed, and he also had 1 interception and 3 pass breakups. He allowed a 101.5 QB passer rating. And when I see Jayron Kearse, I think of a poor man Kyle Hamilton because he plays in the box a lot. He's a blitzer. He's a nice player to have on the blitz plays. And if you want 3 people in the box, he's also very nice for that. And he's also a really nice run stopper too. Like he stopped the run pretty well. Some team fits I can see for him are the Rams, the Commanders, and also the Chiefs. Now, I did want to give some honorable mentions to players. Julio Jones, wide receiver, previously with the Eagles. Brian Pringle, previously with the Commanders, also another wide receiver. Isaiah McKenzie, who was previously with the New York Giants, I believe, as a wide receiver. And Terrell Buggs, who was previously a safety for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, thank you guys for watching the video. I appreciate your support. If you can like and subscribe. But anyways, goodbye all.